I design worship, I think of the 3 V's: the verbal, the visual, and the visceral. Verbal is everything we hear. So it's not just words, but it's sound, it's music, it's sound effects, it's the way what the congregation says, it's anything that has to do with sound. Visual, of course, everything that we see, including lighting and colors, even the way that we're configured in the space. Visual. And viscera is the guts of us, right? That's what we do, everything we do. When I'm designing worship, the primary question is, how can we embody that which we proclaim? How can we embody that which we proclaim? So when I'm doing worship, I'm thinking of these 3 things, but I want to, multi-sensory worship conversation has been going on for a long time, but I want you to think of it in a little different way. Rather than just making sure we've got some words, and we've got some music, and we've got some visuals, and we've got some action, I want you to begin to think like a filmmaker. Let's go to the next slide. Something I call layering. Layering. Think like a filmmaker. So we're not going to think of these multi-senses in little bitty slots, right? Now we're speaking, now we're singing, now we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to think about how do we as artists, as ritual artists, which is really what it is, it's an art, this designing worship, how do we bring all of those things together to create a journey from beginning to end? It's a different way of thinking about putting stuff together. And the 2 big pieces about it that we have to focus on that we don't normally focus on, number 1 is transitions. It's not just what are the pieces we're doing, but how do we get from one piece to another? And the other is flow. Energy and flow. Energy and flow. We've all been in worship services that had really powerful stuff in it, but you go from here to here, right? So how is it that we can begin to think like we're painting, or you use whatever metaphor you want to, painting a canvas, the film is the one that I use. And that is, how do we score what it is that we're doing? How do we make decisions about when music might be helpful to the words that we're hearing? So like today, why did I have the band keep sort of the underscoring thing going and the back and forth when we called out names? Because I wanted a certain kind of energy to stay there, right? So some of you came and lit candles to honor spiritual ancestors or spiritual mentors. I invite you to lift up those names now. Just lift them up and let them fall down like the rain we had this morning. To name them. Yes. And I wanted us to keep singing that song, Draw the Circle Wide, because every time we added more names, the circle got wider and wider and wider, right? Draw the circle wide. Now, if this was small group worship and we were in a room where there wasn't fixed seating, we'd be in a circle, right? We'd be gathered around, and every time we called out names and then sang, we'd step back a little bit. We'd literally draw the circle wider and wider, right? But we couldn't do that in here, so we had to do it in different ways. So when does music help us hear the words? When does music not help us hear the words, right? The choice not to have any underscoring or any soundtrack underneath the prayer we did today, because it was filled with rich verbal images, and we needed to just let the words be the words. So those kinds of decisions. When you watch movies, take a look and look at the decisions that people are making around when to score, when not to score. It also helps you, if you think of thinking like a filmmaker, a lot of what they film ends up on the editing room floor. And the most of what ends up on the editing floor is not the beautiful shots they've done or the action, it's dialogue. They hone it and hone it and hone it and hone it until all they have is what is necessary to tell the story. I think we need to do more of that when we're dealing with words. That the words we use are rich and full and not simply just on and on and on.